Yep, it happened right here in this little area. When he was born, like holding his head as he came out, which was kind of cool to experience. I've never been able to do that with any of my other kids. Okay, so hello there. Welcome to this video. Today I'm going to be sharing my birth story of my fourth baby. This story is another accidental home birth. And I say another because my second son was an accidental home birth as well. And just a fair warning, this is a birth story, and with birth comes some like TMI information. So since you clicked on this video, that's kind of what you're gonna get, because it is a birth story, and with birth can be messy. And the signs leading up to birth can be interesting as well, as you will see when I tell the story. I fixed the camera settings a little bit, so hopefully that's better. I feel like the camera was making me look super washed out. Okay, so it's my fourth baby, my second home birth, accidental home birth, but Lord willing, if we ever have another child, I want to plan for home birth, because that would just take a lot of the worries and a lot of difficulties and obstacles out of the whole birthing process, because I'm pretty confident in birth and whatnot. But yeah, so I don't want to ramble too much because I can just go on and on. So my due date actually isn't even here yet. So he wasn't even supposed to be born yet. I know due dates are estimations, but his due date was March 28th. He was born March 3rd, so he's practically a month early. So he was born at 36 weeks and 3 days. I feel like I'm losing my train of thought. I have like mom brain right now. And today, okay, so yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Today is March 19th. So he's 16 days old, just a little over 2 weeks. So let's get right into the story. March 1st, I had an increase in cervical mucus, which I didn't really think much of it, just because with pregnancy, and especially towards the end of pregnancy, that just comes with the territory. March 2nd, I noticed that my mucus plug was coming out, which wasn't that big of a deal at that point, because I didn't really think much of it, because the mucus plug does rebuild itself. But what did alarm me was around 11 a.m. that day on March 2nd, I did have bleeding. It wasn't a lot of blood, but it was enough to kind of take me back a little bit, because I've never had bleeding in my third trimester at all. Kind of made me scared. I was like thinking it could have been like the placenta detaching from the uterine wall, but it was not. So what I did after I saw that was I put a pad on and I called labor and delivery at the hospital where I was planning on delivering, and they said to keep an eye on it, make sure it wasn't too much blood, make sure it wasn't like blood clots, and if I had contractions to come in. But then the bleeding, it tapered off, and it was mostly the rest of the day just spotting and more of the mucus plug coming out, which I'm sorry if that word is gross, like the word mucus, but this is a birth story, so like I said, you were warned. After calling labor and delivery, I decided to make lunch for my family. At this point, my husband was home from school on Thursdays. He gets off of school early, so he was like feeling tired that day, so he was like taking a rest for a bit. He has to drive an hour to get to school, and I really feel for him, because when I take those hour-long drives, it makes you tired, and if you're doing it day after day, it's tiring doing that commute. So he was like resting for a minute, and I was upstairs with the kids, and I was making lunch, and I just remember feeling super anxious, and I was making sandwiches or something, and I was starting to shake. Like my hands were starting to get shaky, my heart was starting to beat a little faster. I was starting to worry because of the bleeding, and it was making me nervous, like just not knowing what's going to happen. Just because I feel like with bleeding in pregnancy, it's usually kind of an alarming sign to have bleeding. So with that, I was just getting very nervous, and I said a prayer, and I was just trying to continue on as normal to the best I could. But like I said, the bleeding kind of did taper off a little bit. After that, I started to feel like these 10-second pressure sensations, which they weren't painful, but they would make me stop and pause, and then I would continue on with whatever I was doing. My day went on as normal, and then towards the end of the day, I was cleaning up dinner, and my oldest was noticing I was acting weird. He said, "Why do you keep stopping and staring?" And that was because I kept having, like at random, they weren't really they didn't come like every 2 minutes, or it was mostly like every, I'd say 30 minutes, I would get these 10-second sensations of just this pressure feeling, kind of like a cramp, but not really. But when they would happen, I would stop and like pause, and my oldest son was noticing that I was doing that. Then we put the kids to bed at that point, and then after that I decided to take a shower. Before I got into the shower, I had to go number 2, and going to the bathroom can kind of be a labor sign for me, but at the same time, towards the end of pregnancy, for me anyways, I start to have to go to the bathroom more often, and that's just, I think, my body like preparing for birth. And so I went to the bathroom, took a shower, washed my hair, and I remember deciding that I was going to stay up just a little bit longer to let my hair air dry. When I got out of the shower, I came into the room and I noticed that Caleb, my husband, was already sleeping, and I was like, oh wow, he must be really tired because he usually never falls asleep that early. We usually hang out after the kids go to bed, and at that point it was about 9:30 p.m.-ish, give or take. But yeah, so I decided to stay up a little bit, and every once in a while I'd have those 10-second pressure sensations, and then around 11 p.m. I was like, okay, I should just go to bed. And at this point I was thinking that I would go to sleep and my day, Friday, would just be a normal day. But little did I know, I was very wrong. I could not fall asleep. The first few hours, it was because my mind would just not turn off. I was worrying so much. I was super anxious, and I was trying to pray about it, but I couldn't, my mind just couldn't settle down. I was thinking about all the what ifs in regards to birth and us getting to the hospital, and just, we already had like plans set in place, but there still is that, there still is a what if, and to everything, even if you do make plans, things can change. Obviously in my case, they changed very dramatically. So I was trying to go to sleep. I was kind of like half asleep from like 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. And then at 2 a.m. I started to have noticeable contractions. So I decided to download a contraction timer app, which I will put in pictures of it in this video. And every time I'd have one, it would wake me up and I'd go pee. They weren't like super unbearable at this point. And then around 3 a.m. I had to go number 2 again. So around that point, I think the denial of labor starting was the denial of me not being in labor was starting to fade away, because I was like, okay, well maybe something is happening because I'm going to the bathroom, I'm having these contractions. So around 3:30 or 4, I woke up, my husband woke up, I told him what was going on. Beforehand, I texted my mother-in-law, but a text messages usually don't wake people up. It's usually a phone call that wakes someone up. So my husband decided to call her. I had a contraction in bed where I had to really breathe through it. And my husband, he was like, okay, we're just gonna go now, it's time to go. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. I'm like, okay, I guess we're having a baby. And right when I got out of the bed and I started to move around, that was when things really started to pick up. And then at this point, my contractions started to be around 8 to 12 minutes apart. And with the second, third, or fourth baby, they say you should leave for the hospital at that point. So we were like, okay, let's go. But I guess in my case, I think we should have left at 2 a.m. when I felt the need to time the contractions, but in my head, I thought, okay, I'm going to be able to go to sleep, and then tomorrow will continue as normal. I did not think labor would that quick, but you'd think I would know, but I guess I like to psych myself out. It's kind of like in my personality to be like, okay, everything's fine, this is fine, we're all good. And then when a contraction comes on, I tell myself, okay, take 4 deep breaths and it will be over. And so around this time, it's about 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. We're waiting for my in-laws to come. Caleb is putting our hospital bag in the car. I'm trying to get dressed. I get dressed, and it was very hard to decide on what to wear. I feel like at that point my mind was like almost in transition, so I was not in a place to be making decisions. And then I had to go to the bathroom again, and then when I got out of the bathroom, Caleb was like, we have to go. And I heard my in-laws come to the door, and my mother-in-law say, we're here, and at that point I was in transition. The sensation to go to the bathroom did not leave. My husband said, do you want to drive to the hospital that's closer? And I responded to him in such annoyance. I said, I don't know. He knew, like, okay, she's in transition, and we were still trying to make it to the car, and we live in a split level house, so I had to walk up the stairs, go out the front door, and walk down some stairs. Okay, this is where I walked up to get to the front door, and as you can see, the car was right there, so I had to go down those steps to get to the car. And someone was helping me the whole time. It was either my husband or my mother-in-law. Once I got out the front door, I just remember feeling the cold air and saying, this feels really nice. Because when I have contractions, my hands start to get a little sweaty and my feet start to get sweaty because I'm trying to like relax through it. So that I just remember at the end point of being in the bed and having like a pretty good one and my hands getting super sweaty. So we made it down. I made it down the steps. We were like 3 feet away from the car, and I had a really big contraction where I had to hang on to my mother-in-law. I just remember embracing her almost in like a hug. I was like in a state of like, help me. And then when it subsided, she was like, do you want to lay in the grass? Because I think she felt like the baby was coming right then. But I was like, nope, I don't. And then my husband, he started to call 911. He asked his dad to open up the garage so that I could go through the garage instead of walking up the stairs. But then, I don't know why, but I just decided to walk up the stairs anyways. So I walk up the stairs, and at this point, we are in this tiny area of the house entrance. So we're in a split level house, so the entrance is very small. This little area was where everything happened. I remember my husband, there was like boxes right here, and he had to like move the boxes. And then I gave birth right here, literally right there, with my foot propped up on the first step. And this is a bathroom right here. Yeah, and that's a bathroom right there. But, yep, it happened right here, in this little area. And 911 is on speakerphone. My mother-in-law is telling them what's going on. I remember having another big contraction, and that one broke my water. And I remember feeling like such a sense of relief when my water broke. I was like, oh yes. And I thought he was coming with that contraction, but he was not. So there was like this 3 or 4 minute stall in between contractions where I was like, I remember saying like, why did it stop? Because I just wanted it to be over already. And then I also remember leaning onto the railing of the stairs, so my foot was propped up on the first step of the stairs, and I remember leaning onto the railing and saying, oh, he's gonna be so small. And I was worried about him being small because I was early. So at 5:02 a.m. 911 was called. My mother-in-law again, when we were like in the front entrance of the house, she again said, do you want to lay down on the tile? And I said no. And I think I like answered her in a rude way. But when you're in transition, modesty and being polite and everything kind of just flies out the window. And at that point, I felt the need to like pull down my pants a little bit because obviously a baby is coming. And I remember having the thought of like, I can't believe this is happening again. But with my first accidental home birth, I remember it being just me and my husband, unassisted birth. And this time I had an audience because the paramedics arrived shortly after in between him coming. So yeah, I feel like I'm backtracking a little bit, but yeah, I pulled my pants down a little bit, my water broke. I just remember having my right arm leaning up against the railing of the staircase, and then this hand I put right here to like support my down there parts. And then my mother-in-law was like, her hands were right there too, ready to catch the baby. I was not afraid at all. I was just like, I just want to get this over with. Come on, let's get this baby out. And so yeah, the paramedics arrived and I gave birth with an audience. Which it wasn't really like, it's not something that I would choose again. But it is what it is, and at that point, like I said, modesty kind of just flies out the window. But I still had my sweatshirt on, so I felt like that was covering me up a little bit just because it was like kind of longer. But my pants were like a little ways down. I still had my shoes on. My water broke on my shoes. And I remember making eye contact with my husband a few times, and I felt like eye contact with him kind of like grounded me into the situation and what was happening. And then at one point, when Jack was about to be born, the paramedics were asking my husband questions like, what's my full name, what's my birthday, what's my whatever, and my husband said, can we do this later, because he wanted to watch the baby be born. And the paramedic was just like, no, this is, we need this information or something, which I can understand my husband wanting to be in the moment and not be answering questions. I feel like with all of the commotion, it kind of like annoyed both of us in a way. And then at one point, he was like outside on the deck and the front door got closed on him, but the paramedics were kind of just focused on me and the baby, and they weren't really concerned with the family members and who's who and who needs to be in that little front entrance. Yeah, it was kind of just like rush and a little chaotic at that point. But yeah, he was born, and I remember when he was born holding his head as he came out, which was kind of cool to experience. I've never been able to do that with any of my other kids. But yeah, I felt his head, and I just remember doing the birth roar, and my mother-in-law helped catch him, and I held him for a bit, and my mother-in-law is a retired NICU nurse, so with her experience, I felt like very comfortable and confident that everything would be okay. And of course, I was trusting in the Lord. At one point in labor, I was in the bathroom, and I just said a prayer like, you know, what's ever going to happen, I pray that you will just protect us, Lord God, protect me and baby Jack, and that everything will be okay. And it really was, even though it was a little chaotic. But my mother-in-law, she was doing the APGAR score, and she was helping the paramedics with the umbilical cord and all of that, like getting it clamped. The paramedics, they don't really know what they're getting into with each call, like each 911 call, and they said that they never experienced helping deliver a baby. So, and they even said that my mother-in-law was like a really good help. I forget what word they said. They said something like her being very valuable in the situation, which she really was, and I'm really thankful for them. And at this point, my father-in-law, he was down at the lower level of the stairs, so I don't think he really saw like the birth, which I'm kind of thankful for, because birth is messy and and modest. But he was down there, and he was able to bring up blankets for me and the baby. And then once he was born, I was able to kind of sit back on the tile, take off my shoes, take off my pants. My pants were soaked. They handed me a blanket. I wrapped myself in a blanket. I put back on my shoes because I knew that we were gonna head out the door again. And they were trying to get Jack situated, make sure he was crying, make sure he was like breathing and everything was good, and his APGAR score was good. And he was born at 5:11 a.m. And at this point, I was standing like in front of the doorway. I was watching them put Jack in his car seat, and he was just like this little newborn, and they're trying to buckle him in his car seat, and he's naked because they're not just going to be like, oh, let's put a diaper on him. So he got into his car seat naked. Try to wrap him up, like put a blanket around him as best they could because it was pretty cold outside. And I just remember standing in front of the front door and shaking. After birth, I kind of get that rush of adrenaline where I just have the shakes. So, and I told the paramedics, I was like, I'm fine, I'm shaking from the adrenaline. And then they put me on the little stretcher, and they carried me down the stairs, which I was like, please do not drop me, please do not drop me. And then I get into the ambulance, and they were trying to figure out how to get Jack's, the base of the car seat in the ambulance, and I felt like that was taking so long, and I was starting to become impatient. I just wanted to get to the hospital. I wanted to deliver the placenta and just get settled into somewhere where I can just hold the baby and not be in this state of like transportation basically. And they had my legs strapped in, and I did not want to be sitting like that at all. So I was very uncomfortable. I wanted to be on my side. After I give birth, my tailbone is sore. At this point, I have not delivered the placenta. I'm still waiting to deliver it. So I'm like uncomfortable. It feels like I'm holding something in, which I am. And then we get to the hospital, and I just remember they couldn't figure out how to undo the car seat from the base, and I was just like, it's just that red lever, you just gotta pull up. They couldn't figure it out, so they undid him out of the car seat, and then I just remember looking behind me and seeing my naked child in the freezing cold air, And then they handed him to me, and so I covered him up. And I remember being wheeled into like the ER and just people staring at me. I was like, this is weird. And then one of the firemen gave me his beanie. At first I was like, no, it's okay, I'm fine. And then he was like, I would feel much better if you had something on your head. Like, he was worried about me being cold. So, but then, so I was like, okay, fine, I'll wear it. So I had a fighter, I can't talk. I had a fireman's beanie on, and my husband was not able to ride in the ambulance with me. I even asked him, and they said, no, there's not enough room, but there was room. I saw there was an extra seat. He could have fit, but they didn't let him. So he drove in another car right behind us, and he had to wait to get in to where we were because they had to process my name in the system, and he had to wait for all that to get processed and whatnot. And then once we were in a labor delivery room, I was able to deliver the placenta, which was such a relief. It was basically an hour or a little less than an hour that I was holding the placenta in, which was uncomfortable and a little annoying, but then once it was out, it was just such a sense of relief. And then I got checked, so a doctor was able to help deliver. He like pushed on my stomach a little bit, and then it came out really easily. And then he checked me to see if I tore. I had no tearing or anything. But once that placenta was out, it was such a sense of relief. They had to warm him up because he was a little bit colder, and he was 6 pounds 13 ounces, which is a pretty good size for being as early as he was. He wasn't like super early, but they call when they're born at, I think, 34 to 36 weeks, they call it late preterm. So he was early. I think they prefer babies to be 37 weeks. And then they had to check his sugars every so often to make sure they were staying at a normal level, just because early babies, they have trouble keeping their sugars at a normal level, which at first, the first 12 hours, he did have trouble. And they kept giving him like this glucose gel, like a sugar gel, and I didn't really get the point of that. I think I would have, now looking back, I should have just requested him to maybe have a little bit of formula, and I feel like that would have smoothed out any of those issues. But so nursing him was a bit challenging just because he was so sleepy, and he still is a sleepy baby. So nursing him the first 12-24 hours was a little difficult, but we made it through, and his sugar levels regulated. He didn't have to have a NICU stay, which I was kind of worried about that, having him to go to the NICU. At one point they said if he's not able to regulate his sugars, he'll have to go into the NICU, which I was like, I do not want that to happen. So I was trying to like hand express my milk, syringe feed him milk, or the colostrum, to make sure he was getting stuff. So I was like really on top of it to make sure he was getting the colostrum and eating every 2 hours, so that he did not have a NICU stay, because I really did not want my baby in the NICU. And I think after about 45 minutes of me being in the hospital, my name got into the system and my husband was able to come in. So that is the story of his birth. Lord willing, we will have a home birth next time, if there is next time. I can't really say if there will be. I feel like that's all in God's hands, whatever is to come, and if he blesses us with more children. So yeah, that about wraps up this story. Yeah, it's been fun. It was quite the birth experience, but it was okay. We made it through, and we're healthy, and we're thankful. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a blessed day in Jesus' name. Okay, bye.